Today, we're putting on our detective hats and cracking a fascinating medical case. It's a condition that starts out with the quietest whispers, a little fatigue, some dizziness, but it can escalate into a full-blown, life-threatening emergency. The condition we're investigating? It's called Addison disease.
Just think about that for a second. Feeling wiped out? A little dizzy? I mean, these are things most of us would just brush off, right? Maybe you think it's stress or you just didn't sleep well. But what if those were actually the first clues in a really complex mystery? One where your own body's defense system has turned against a vital internal factory.
So, let's start our investigation. The title of this section, The Insidious Onset, is just perfect. That word, insidious, is so key because Addison disease doesn't just show up with a bang. It creeps in, which makes it incredibly difficult to spot in the early stages. And here are those first clues. You can see right away why this is so tricky. They are unbelievably nonspecific. Weakness, fatigue, feeling dizzy when you stand up. I mean, come on, that could be anything. Then you add in nausea and weight loss, and the list of possible culprits is a mile long. This right here is exactly why the mystery so often goes unsolved for way too long. And this quote from the MSD manual just hits the nail on the head. Because the symptoms are so vague, they're often misdiagnosed. Sometimes they're even dismissed as being purely psychological or stress-related. And all the while, the real physical problem is just hiding in the background, getting worse. But then, a much more distinctive clue can finally start to show up. It's called hyperpigmentation. And believe me, this is not a normal suntan. We're talking about a strange, blotchy darkening of the skin, especially on places like your knuckles, your elbows, and even on old scars. It can even appear as bluish-black spots inside your mouth. This is the first major lead that tells doctors something is seriously off on a hormonal level.
Okay, so what in the world is causing all this chaos? Now we get to go from the external clues to the internal crime scene to really understand the science behind all these symptoms.
So meet the adrenal cortex. You've got these little glands that sit right on top of your kidneys, and their outer layer is basically a powerhouse hormone factory. They turn out something called corticosteroids, and these are hormones that are absolutely essential for, everything from managing stress to balancing your body's salt and water. So what goes wrong? Well, in about 70% of cases, it's the body's own immune system. It gets confused and it starts attacking the adrenal cortex, effectively shutting down production. It's an inside job, really, a friendly fire incident that brings this vital factory to a grinding halt. And here's where we can finally connect all the dots. That factory shutdown means two critical hormones just go missing. First up, you've got cortisol. You've probably heard of it as the stress hormone. Without it, you get weakness, low blood sugar, and low blood pressure. The second is aldosterone, which is in charge of your salt and water balance. When that's gone, your body loses sodium and hangs on to potassium, leading to dehydration, and yep, you guessed it, even lower blood pressure. This explains perfectly why patients feel so weak and dizzy. Okay, so with all the clues gathered and the internal mechanism understood, how do doctors finally crack the case? This is where modern medicine and diagnostics come in to give us the definitive proof we need. The diagnostic process is actually a very logical hunt. It all starts with simple blood work, looking for those electrolyte imbalances we just talked about. From there, they move on to measuring hormone levels directly. And finally, there's a special confirmation test to prove, without a doubt, that the adrenal glands just aren't doing their job. And here's the hard data. The blood work comes back and it shows low sodium and high potassium, a classic signature. But the real smoking gun is the hormone combination. You have very low cortisol, even though you have very high ACTH. See, ACTH is the signal from the pituitary gland that's supposed to tell the adrenals to make cortisol. So high ACTH and low cortisol means the pituitary is screaming at the top of its lungs, but the adrenal glands just aren't listening. And this all gets confirmed with what's called the ACTH stimulation test. Doctors inject synthetic ACTH to directly command the adrenal glands to make cortisol. In a healthy person, cortisol levels would shoot right up. But in a patient with Addison disease, crickets. Nothing happens. The factory is officially offline, and this test proves it beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Now, before we get to the solution, we have to talk about the stakes here. Because if the disease goes undiagnosed or isn't managed properly, a stressful event like an infection or even a surgery can trigger what's called an adrenal crisis. And this is an absolute lights and sirens medical emergency. The body, with no cortisol to manage the stress, simply goes into shock.
And let's be perfectly clear about how urgent this is. The MSD manual states, and I'm quoting here, that any delay in instituting corticosteroid therapy can be fatal. This is not a wait-and-see kind of situation. Immediate action is required to save someone's life.
So, we finally reached the resolution. The mystery is solved, the culprit has been identified. The big question now is, how do we restore order and manage this condition so people can live a normal life?
And the treatment, thankfully, is just beautifully logical. It's a two-pronged approach that replaces exactly what's missing. Hydrocortisone steps in to do the job of cortisol, which restores energy and the ability to handle stress. Then, fludrocortisone comes in to replace aldosterone, which fixes that whole salt and water imbalance. It's a daily replacement therapy that brings the body's chemistry right back into balance. But living with Addison's disease means you have to be proactive. It's not just about popping some pills every day, it's about really understanding your own body. Patients learn to increase their medication dose when they're sick to mimic a natural stress response. They also carry an emergency injection of hydrocortisone and wear a medical alert bracelet, because in an emergency, that simple piece of information can be the difference between life and death.
So we've followed the clues and we've solved the case. And Addison disease is such a powerful reminder that our health relies on this incredibly complex, delicate symphony of hormones playing in the background. The fact that one tiny factory shutting down can have such profound effects, it just goes to show you how intricately we're all designed and how much we depend on that perfect invisible balance just to get through the day.